just couldn't believe that there was this rustic bubble, in the middle of a big, busy, bustling city, and yet just, a few blocks from downtown. And there were a lot more characters. There were a lot more rundown boats. It was pretty funky.
That was Margaret Casey. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from poets, artists, business owners, and San Franciscans from all walks of life, telling stories, sharing personal histories, and trying to put into words what makes this city so special. Welcome to episode 29, part 2. In part 1, Margaret shared the story of her wacky journey from Australia to San Francisco. In this podcast, she fills us in on her life since she decided to make San Francisco her home. Included is the story of how she met episode 15 storyteller Sarah Davis and came to live on a houseboat in Mission Creek. Here's Margaret.
Well, yeah, I was sort of burning with passion at the time. I'd hooked up with this poet and author named Alan Kaufman, who sort of spends his time between here and New York. He's just got a new book out called The Berlin Woman. But he and I were sort of rushing back and forth and here and there, and were we full of it? Yeah, probably. But we were living our dream, and we had a lot of fun. But it was a spectacularly dysfunctional relationship. Spectacularly. Even I was scandalized by it. But fortunately, we remain on good terms and talk to each other occasionally.
So you got into writing poetry?
Yes.
Yourself?
Yes, I did. And I had a modest success, but I also had to get to work and pay the bills and just sort of get real about... of course, I wasn't entitled to any benefits or anything like that. Not that I would have got them, but it was up to me. Mm-hmm. So...
Do you still write poetry at all?
I do, but I'm afraid the problem is I'm very happy. And I don't have that. I think you turn to something as distilled as poetry when you have great pain and you're looking for a way to share it out. Mm-hmm. And as time went by and I got happier and better adjusted and lost more bad habits, it's hard to do.
Damn it, I'm happy. You'd be upset about being happy.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's somewhere I could go.
Sure, sorry, I'm just looking.
I'm not happy about being happy.
Yeah. So the saxophone, you're like, this...
I'm like, this is it. This just anywhere that can make magic like this is special. And I started to buy into all the anecdotal stuff that people would say about San Francisco, such as it's magical or it's not like anywhere else or only in San Francisco. I came to subscribe fully to that.
And it was it's constantly changing, of course, but it's a different version. This is early 90s.
Early 90s, and it was different because people were really, the number of deaths, identified deaths from AIDS was profound. Mm-hmm. And with my friend Paul Brown and all of his friends in the gay community, there was someone dying every week, and somehow or another Paul was always the one that came home with the box of dress-ups. So we found that the best way to deploy these costumes was to have a sidewalk sale and be out there dressed up and to attract people. And one time we had it was a costume for the Supremes. So we had 3 long, lurex dresses and 3 wigs. And I was a little bit shorter than everybody else. So Paul artfully went and got a pair of those Japanese clogs and wired them onto 2 coffee cans. So we could all be roughly the same height. We made for us a small fortune that day on the sidewalk. The sisters are special.
So special.
Yeah, and that is truly something that you won't find anywhere else. And I mean, the having been fully educated in the Catholic system, I was educated exclusively by nuns. The thought of them on roller skates, flying down a hill was irresistible.
Yeah. As I told one or two of them when we were recording, I've lived here 20 some odd years, and it's still true today. Anytime I'm somewhere and there are sisters, if I'm part of an event or if it's just even just walking down the street, it always just feels special.
Yeah.
Like they make things special.
They do. They do. And the group of sisters that I knew, they had made this movie, and it was called Rat Girl Rhonda, and it was based on The Bad Seed. Oh, it was hilarious. It was short, but if anyone out there ever has a copy of Rat Girl Rhonda, it should.
It needs to be on YouTube.
It does.
Wow.
It really does.
I want to see that. Cool. Okay. What's next?
So we're moving toward the boats, moving toward the houseboats. I had got a job for Bay West Showplace Investors, and they were a group of property developers who down on Henry Adams Street had the Showplace, the Galleria, a couple of other buildings, a lot of parking lots in between. There was the Baker Hamilton. They didn't own that building, but there was a whole scene going on down there with high-end furnishings and venues. The Concourse was the largest privately owned venue in the city of San Francisco. So, we would get a lot of requests, and we did a lot of big events. The Exotic Erotic Ball was there for a long time, and that had originally started out as like truly an underground people's event, but I truly...
a lot of things.
Yeah. By the time it ended, I think it was just, prom night for tweakers. Mm-hmm. I don't know how else to describe it. But we did the first raves there, a rave called Sharon and a bunch of other different raves, and later on concerts and all kinds of things. So I had become very involved with the events community, with the police at 850 Bryant for the permitting. They were lofts, and, building conversions were starting to happen. And with a lot of these, there would be, there'd be a steel frame. So whereas before we had never had any neighbours to complain about the noise, we started to get residents, especially once we started doing the raves, because the bass will travel and it'll reverberate in the steel frame, and it's no good telling residents, well, if you want a bucolic lifestyle, what are you doing here?
But it reminds me of people who move somewhere and don't bother to know where they're moving, and then come in and complain. And there's a freeway running, and you knew that when you moved in.
Well, that's right.
The airport.
And another thing that we did a lot of was Latin dances.
Oh, fun.
With the guy that owned Cesar's Latin Palace on Mission Street. And so we would have these big Latin dances, and they were a lot of fun. There would always be a photo op with a statue of the Virgin Mary, where you could, the Virgin of Guadalupe, where you could take your Polaroid home with you. People would walk around with these little sort of woven, I don't know really what you'd call them. They were sort of strips, but you could identify yourself regionally. There'd be some great cat fights on the floor, as somebody's mistress was there with somebody's wife, and it could all blow apart. And the guy that owns Cesar's Latin Palace, his name was Cesar Ascaruns. And the greatest compliment he ever paid me, he was a certain type of guy, and he would come around and try and talk me into renting him the building, and I'd be resisting. And finally, his big move was he dropped to one knee and sang "Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport" by Rolf Harris. And it was like, okay, I'll go back to my office and do the contract. So it was during that course in time that I was acquiring a lot of knowledge about crowd control, about waste disposal, about all kinds of things like this.
About event management.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I worked on and off for this company for like 15 years. And by about 1998, the tech conferences were starting to really take this new format of being huge events. And so there was a company called PeopleSoft, and they were as big as Salesforce is now. But PeopleSoft started doing these user conferences, and they hired these two guys, Ron Regina and Don Richards, very creative guys who had come through the School of Architecture at UC Berkeley. And they came to me and said, listen, we've got to do this huge concert. It's got headline entertainment, and we want the concourse, but we also want the showplace and the Galleria, and we want the traffic circle. We're going to put a Ferris wheel in there, and we want the baker, and we want. So working with them, that was how I met Sarah Davis, because it sort of called in everybody in town to work on this huge event. And it really paved the way for street closures, for private events. Mm-hmm. Before then, it was virtually impossible to get a street closure for a private event. Right. They had to be public and free and open. So that sort of started the blueprint for that kind of thing. And I suspect I met Sarah Davis at the dumpsters. We were having an excited, enthusiastic conversation at the dumpsters.
At the dumpsters. That's amazing. But you're talking about like your Oracle World and your whatever the gaming one and
exactly.
the Apple one.
So this first one, I think it had my memories. I know it had Chris Isaac, and it had, drawing a blank, who did Rock Lobster?
Oh, the B-52s.
Yes, it had the B-52s and a bunch of other people and bands playing in every room. It was huge. Mm-hmm. And I remember at some point in time, in the concourse, the restrooms at 7th Street broke down, not surprisingly. And so, I'm on the radio and there's all these people, the restrooms are broken down, quick. The restrooms are broken, the restrooms are broken. I remember getting on like, the restrooms are dead. Forget it. Restrooms, no more. Shut them down.
At least you had them and you had the intent
to that's right. That's exactly right. And then sadly for me, that was the beginning, not sadly, of my voyage of discovery in the world of public sanitation. Which I remain at the forefront of today.
Interesting. Yeah, your one of your emails, maybe the first one, mentioned your work with Off the Grid, the Sunday
That's
picnic.
right. I work for the Presidio Trust in their cultural and community programs division. So
doing sanitation or
no?
Okay,
no.
It's got to be more than that.
No, but we have grown this Presidio Picnics event from being something that attracted a few hundred people over a few weeks to regularly getting 7,000 people every Sunday.
I can attest to that. I've been.
Oh, you've been?
I loved it. I got there early.
Did you have no, you got there early, so you didn't have a problem getting to the restaurant.
I got there early.
Yeah, I like that.
I like to get there early.
Everyone should get there
when
early.
It gets to a certain critical mass, I get out of there.
That's right.
In general.
Yep.
But yeah, it was lovely. It's also just it's a beautiful property.
Well, it is,
space.
And it's a curious thing because it's a national park. So it's a national park in an urban centre. Yet our mindset is more, you think more Yosemite than Golden Gate Park. But people come in expecting Golden Gate Park. So it's been a voyage of discovery to find ways to get people to come for the picnic and then stay for the park.
I remember when, this is another side note, it being a national park, I remember when, was it California that banned foie gras for a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the restaurants out there could serve it.
That's right, because it's federal.
Land.
Yes, I know. I've just this morning was discussing some messaging about smoking and a way to remind people that pot might be legal everywhere else in the state, but you're on federal property when you're at the Presidio, and it's still against the law. Mm-hmm. Is someone going to whip out and write you a citation? Probably not, but you shouldn't be smoking in a national park anyway. So
yeah. Did we fill in the gap between people? Is there
Okay. So
Sorry,
now I've met Sarah Davis. Now we're both working on these huge events. She and I went on to work on several more because I actually left the showplace and started working for Ron and Don on these big events, and that was wonderful for me because then I started to travel around the United States to Atlanta and Chicago and Los Angeles and all kinds of places that were.
These were all PeopleSoft events?
Yes.
Or? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And during that time, they also acquired Cisco Systems as a client. And so, interestingly enough, people from those days still do the Cisco events now. And of course, Sarah Davis is the biggest street closer in the nation.
In the nation.
In the nation.
Are we? Is it true?
No,
Okay.
that's not verifiable. But I've often
here.
been stuck in traffic trying to get home here to the boats and thought to myself, "Damn you, Sarah Davis."
Yep. Thanks a lot, neighbor.
I once went to the traffic meeting where they decide all of the what we closed at what won't. But she only let me come with her if we pretended we didn't know each other in case I started going off complaining and she didn't want to be associated.
Oh, wow. So you're now working on with...
Don Richards and Ron Regina.
Yeah, okay. So were you kind of thinking like, oh, event production is something I'm really into?
Yes, this was an opportunity to go and work with my favorite clients. So I already knew a great deal about venue management and crowd control and some of the infrastructure issues, and then being exposed to their creative approach and the scale at which they figured things out. It was fantastic. It was fantastic for a few years until the stock market crashed. I think at the end of 2001. Mm-hmm. It was going down the tubes, and everybody was pulling back on their spending. And I actually got a call from the showplace who said, "So what's it going to take for you to come back?" So I went back and worked there for quite a few more years, just managing those properties.
But by now, you and Sarah were pretty good friends.
Yes, by now we were tight. I had come into the hospital. She called me the morning she had her baby. Like the room, naturally there was a crowded room, and then everybody exited. And then I got a call. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. And Sarah called and she said, "You're the only person I know who's awake at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I can't get up. I'm lying here, all trussed up, and I'm looking at Sean, and he looks like he's going to fall off the little camp bed that they'd put up for him." So I said, "Hold on, I'll be there."
Can you talk about the first time? Was your friendship with Sarah? Is that the first time you kind of came down to the houseboats?
Yes,
I want to hear about your first trip to the houseboats and what your impressions.
Sure. Well, I had seen them from the freeway, like everybody else did. I kind of knew through Sarah that she lived down here, but before all of the UC campus was built out, and they had the golf range down there under the freeway, and they had this great little cafe that sold terrific hamburgers, and it was a popular Friday destination. And I had been talking to Sarah about it, and she said, "God, whatever you do, don't park in the houseboat parking spaces when you go down there." So we just arranged the next time I went down there, I came over to visit. And the community garden was in its full glory at that point in time. And I just couldn't believe that there was this rustic bubble, in the middle of a big, busy, bustling city, and yet just, a few blocks from downtown. And there were a lot more characters. There were a lot more rundown boats. It was pretty funky. As people know, it's very hard to get in here. And what happened for me was that I was actually living in Las Vegas doing a project there. And I got a call from Sarah Davis one Friday night. She was pretty let's just say she'd had a few drinks, and she said, "Hey, do you want to come live on a houseboat? Philip's going to Europe for 3 months, and you can have his boat if you want."
That's the phone call I'm still waiting on, by the way. And
Yeah.
I will be for the rest of my... Anyway.
Let me tell you, if you get it, you say yes, and you do it right away. So that's what I did. I left Las Vegas and moved into Philip's house and spent 3 months here. That's Philip D'Andrade. And
In this exact houseboat?
no, he's a couple doors down
Okay. Got it.
that away. And after 3 months, I couldn't stand the thought of leaving. It was, I couldn't do it. I had trouble, packing up my stuff and figuring out what to do. I just didn't want to go. So I took a second look at what was for sale. Now, this place had already been presented to me as the second worst boat on the harbour and pretty much a total write-off and forget about it. And I looked at it and I thought, no, I can fix this. I can do it. So fortunately I had a little money. I'd owned a house in Glen Park and sold that, and because it's very hard to get a loan for a floating home. That's the problem right there. So anyway, I was able to get it, and then I had to gut it, because at the time there were electrical cords trailing in the water. There was a tiny, horrid little sort of bathroom, strange dwarf-like seat, and some, and it smelled bad, and it had no heating, and etc. So anyway, I just gutted it down to the studs.
And I'm going to say you've done an amazing job. It's lovely here.
Thank you.
And I used that. Is that the same bathroom?
No.
Okay.
No. The one thing I'd seen in the other houseboats was people always made their bathrooms tiny. So I didn't. I made mine big enough to fit a washer, dryer, and a clawfoot tub.
You did.
And I think Sarah was still living in the little boat that she grew up in. Although I don't know how anybody grew, because it was pretty small. So that was my first visit, and then I began to come down here and meet people. And we were talking about Jack Wickett earlier. In those early days, I always remember he would call me ma'am. He wouldn't use my name. He just called me ma'am, and I thought I have to get to the bottom of what is with that. But I never could. I never could.
Back then, would you have ever thought in a million years you also eventually...
No.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't until I actually stayed here and was sleeping here and waking up in the morning here and getting involved in the lives of all the birds and the ducks and, following that whole busy social life that that the birds live, that it got me. Mm-hmm. And it got me good.
It caught you like a crab trap or something.
Yeah. Just after doing it, it was like, well, I can't not do this.
Yeah.
I have to be here.
You said you moved here from Glen Park?
Yes.
And this is about, you said 8 or so years ago.
Yes.
Do you like Glen Park neighborhood?
Yeah, I loved it.
It
was really good. It improved a lot. It had always had the library, but eventually it got the supermarket, and there's Tiger's Cafe, and there's that great bookstore, and lots of other good things. And who can beat living near a BART station and freeway access? And it was a great place. Truly a great place.
It's just not a houseboat.
It's just not a houseboat. That's right. That's right. No, I think the other thing that's really exceptional about being here is that we are a community. We do help each other. We look in when each other is sick. We bring each other food. We take care of each other's kids. We give each other rides. You can always call your neighbor for help, and almost always someone will respond. And we're just a community. We're not a religion. We're not a cult. We're not anarchists. We're not... We're just people.
Well, besides location, you have a lifestyle in common. It's something that needs to be, protected and advocated for.
I think absolutely. I think we really keep the boats are here because of that environmental bent to how we live down here. And I think protecting this shoreline, protecting the trees and the habitat for the birds and the wildlife and the marine life. We have more than once untangled a sea lion, with caution tape down their throat, or, there's things like this that happen a lot. Every now and then we get the odd dead body that washes up. We had one wash up about 2 years ago. And fortunately, the person who spotted it could see that it was bobbing, and it was bobbing and going to go under the dock. So they boat people do this kind of stuff. They just whipped up a lasso and caught it and tied it up until the medical examiner could come and help us out with it. So I guess you never know what you're going to find in the water. And we see all kinds of things, and certainly anyone who's had their car broken into while they've been parked at parking lot A at the Giants, they really should come down here the next day, because those thieves are on bicycles, and they bring all their stuff down here to Huffaker Park and sort through it and just leave it there. They just abandon it if they don't want it. One day I found a hockey referee's bag, which I could only knew what that was because my husband's a hockey ref, second longest serving referee in Northern California. So I thought, that looks like a hockey bag. And I went up there and went, oh my God, it's got knee pads, and it's got the striped ref's jacket, and it's got the book of rules. And so I just called the guy, and he came and got it. And of course, it had been stolen, while his car was parked at parking lot A. Another day I saw a suitcase, and it had, stuff thrown all around it. So I thought, let me have a good look at this. And it was someone from Sydney. So I called the guy up, and it turned out he was over here to help his niece, who lived in Philadelphia, move out to work for UCSF. And they had only been parked for 2 hours. And there was, they'd taken everything. There was just a bunch of shirts and stuff like that. But, if your car gets broken into down there, try walking down the path here. One thing I often see in the water is briefcases and backpacks, and somebody's stolen them, gone through them, and just tossed them.
That was Margaret Casey. Check back next week when we'll hear from a group of Project Open Hand volunteers. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn about some of the stuff we do besides the podcast. Find the nearly 80 episodes on our website, storiedsf.com, which is also where you can now go to pledge your support for the show. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the show for us. Send comments or suggestions to storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.